So we've focused a lot of attention on jails and prisons. And what I was interested in writing about and revealing is how mass incarceration has changed the nature of social life in our everyday relationships. So how it shows up in, for example, my relationship with my brother, who's been in and out of prison, how it shows up across the dinner table, how it shows up between a mother and her child, a grandmother and her grandson who she's trying to help. And so this for me is the afterlife. It's the lingering effects of incarceration in places that we might not expect.
And one of the ways that shows up, you say in this book, is that people who are living in this afterlife of incarceration get by, and this is a great phrase, I love it, on an economy of favors.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So beginning in about 1980, there were changes in liability law that made it so that landlords, employers, licensing officials, et cetera, could be sued if they rented an apartment to or hired somebody with a criminal record. And the way that they took on that change in law and policy is they evicted people with criminal records. They refused to hire people with criminal records. In fact, one change in policy that started in 1996 made it so that if someone with a criminal record so much as visited, the person who owned the apartment could be put out for letting them visit. And so what this does is it makes it so it's impossible, nearly impossible for somebody with a record to find sustainable employment or housing or many of the things that they need to get by to meet their basic human needs. And at the same time, it makes them the least desirable candidates to help. It makes them somebody who you don't want to help because you can be harmed if you help them. They have to convince you to do them the favor of hiring them for a job that they're suitable for, leasing them an apartment for which they're well qualified, because of the legal changes that we've enacted during the age of mass incarceration.
What do you make then of, just to get to the news of the, new administration, what do you make of the Biden administration's orders on private prisons, which are, we should say, just a small part of the prison system in this country, and also some of the thoughts of new people in power about incarceration in this economy?
I think it's a positive step in the right direction in how we think about the problems that we face. But turning every private prison, moving people from a private prison to a public prison doesn't reduce the number of people in prison, and it certainly doesn't address the problem of the 19.6 million people with felony records who live on the outside of American jails or prisons.
Which seems to me to suggest that you believe while there are legitimate policy and law questions that we need to address, there's a whole slice of this that's subjective and more hearts and minds than law and policy.
It's interesting. My dear friend Ronald Simpson Bay, who's in the book, would always say, I tell people you have to change hearts and minds. And when he used to say that, I would roll my eyes. I'd say hearts and minds, it's a legal problem. This is a problem of the law. Right? So there are 45,000 laws, policies, and administrative sanctions that target people with criminal records. But he says this, that's important too. He says, but if you don't change hearts and minds, every time you get a new administration, you face the threat of them wiping away any progress that you've made with the stroke of a pen. So there also has to be a transformation in how we think about people who've caused us harm and the place that we think that they're supposed to take up in society after they've done their time. So this is absolutely a both and response to this problem.
So let me, on the way out here, get you back to where we started, which is your brother and the afterlife. And I'm sure you've given much thought over your life and certainly specific while writing this book about how he wound up there and you wound up where you are. But tell me the story, would you, of trying to find him housing after he got out of prison?
Yeah, it was striking. So one of the mandates is that you must have a place to parole to or to report to if you're to be released on probation, which is early release from jail or prison. And so I had to find some place for him to be. Now, I lived in faculty housing. Now, I've done quite a bit in my own life to force my way into the middle class. Did the education route, served in the military, did a bunch of things over my lifetime to ensure that my family was okay. But I was living in faculty housing. And so in faculty housing, you can't have people with criminal records living in your home. So it didn't matter that I was, a professor at a pretty prestigious university, that I was myself middle class, that he couldn't stay with me, or my family, would be evicted. So we made a connection with a dear friend who said he would rent him his apartment. But the dear friend ended up renting that apartment to someone else.
Oh, man.
and so
maybe not such a dear friend, but anyway, go on.
These are all real questions.
Yeah.
And so we're scrambling to find him a place to stay. And so we eventually land on him staying in the apartment with the dear friend.
Oh, man.
And so the probation officer comes out to inspect the apartment, and I get a text message from him telling me that the probation placement has failed because my dear friend had 2 dogs.
Wow.
And people with felony records can't live in places that have large dogs. So this was the struggle.
Yeah. And out of that, and a bunch more, I imagine, comes a book.
Check, check, check. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Great. Super.
See what happens here. Still can't get my picture in.
Hi, everyone. Just waiting for everyone to get here. Okay, it looks like we're all here. And it's just past 7. So at this time, I'd like to call to order the February 1st, 2021 regular board meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. I'd like to announce the board held an executive session on January 11th regarding negotiations. At this time, if you could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
To the republic.
One nation,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Liberty and
justice.
justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone who is here with us this evening, and everyone who's viewing remotely. Board members, with the agenda before you, are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, for the audience this evening, public comment is provided both at the end of the board meeting as well as prior to any action items or votes by the board. And at this time, Dr. O'Donnell is going to go over some of the housekeeping items related to our remote format.
Thank you. Tonight's meeting will be virtual as a result of the pandemic, and we will resume normal in-person meetings when it's safe for us to do so. During the meeting, the IT help desk is available if the community encounters technical difficulties. You may email itssupport@scasd.org or call us at 814-231-7743. Public comment may be made at the end of our agenda as well as prior to the board taking action on an individual item. For community members who wish to make a comment, please use the raise hand feature in the Zoom program accessed under the participants tab. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. O'Donnell. At this time, I'd like to call on our board secretary for a roll call of board members.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell.
Yes, present.
Okay.
Here.
Ms. Brandt,
Here.
Ms. Concepcion,
Here.
Dr. Duffy,
Here.
Mr. Hutchinson.
I'm here.
Okay. Mr. Leos,
Here.
Ms. Sidney.
Here.
Okay. All right. At this time, we'll be moving on to the communications portion of the agenda, and Dr. Bader will be providing recognition to a retiree who is on our agenda this evening.
Thanks, Amber. So Shelby Smeltzer is retiring on June 2nd, 2021 after 36 years in the district. She was hired on October 14th, 1985 as a clerical aide in the elementary coordinator's office. From 1995 to 2008, she worked as secretary to the registrar and community education, then worked for 7 years as secretary to the high school associate principal. Since 2015, Shelby has been an executive secretary in the Human Resources Office, coordinating the district's substitute program. Human Resources Director Linda Pierce commended Shelby, saying, "Shelby is one of the most dedicated and hardworking people I know. She consistently goes above and beyond to provide the schools with substitute staffing, assist building staff and substitutes, and improve the substitute program. As important, Shelby is one of the kindest people I have had the privilege to know." Shelby's colleagues noted her contributions this way. "Shelby has a kind, tender soul, especially for her pets. She takes everything she does and everything that happens around her to heart. She wants the best for everyone." Another said, "Shelby's dedication to the State College Area School District is second to none. It has been an absolute pleasure working alongside such a kind-hearted, caring individual." Shelby was an integral member in the development of and an ongoing leader in the Support Staff Union, the State College Area Educational Support Personnel Association. Current President Trish Storch noted Shelby's contributions. "SCESPA sends our best wishes for the happiest retirement to our friend and colleague, Shelby Smeltzer. Shelby embodied the best of SCESPA and State College Area School District in all she did. She was always professional, kind, and encouraging. Shelby served both students and adults with the same compassion and respect. She knew that for any of us to reach our goals, we all have to be treated with the dignity of a fair opportunity. We admire and we appreciate your commitment of service, Shelby. You will be missed." The board thanks Shelby for her service and wishes her the best in retirement.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bader, and thank you, Shelby, for everything you've done for the district over the years. I know I've really enjoyed working with you. Moving on now to the superintendent's update. Dr. O'Donnell, do you have an update?
Yes, I do have several items. First, I'd like to begin with some really great news. We're in the process of finalizing a COVID-19 vaccine clinic in partnership with Center Volunteers in Medicine. This will be for both our employees and community members who are eligible to receive the vaccine in phase 1A. We should have more specific details tomorrow, so we'll forward those out to our school community, and as will Center for Volunteers in Medicine. Second item I have for you, we just right before the meeting, we just made a decision that we announced a 2-hour delay for the morning with road conditions going in the wrong direction right now, as well as the forecast for tonight, as well as which includes additional accumulation and increased wind problems. So I just wanted to let you know that we just made that. To clarify our decision regarding today, we're not approaching our snow day decisions the same as some of the other districts in the region. So, you know, today's school day will be made up on Friday, May 28th. To clarify, we're prioritizing utilizing our built-in snow days into the academic calendar for offering in-person learning rather than asynchronous remote experiences. If our practice should change, we'll notify our school community in advance. Regarding the academic calendars, we look ahead to next school year. We're planning, and it's in our agenda planning with the board, to be presenting a draft calendar to the board during the next meeting on the 15th. Finally, on a sad note, this weekend I had an opportunity to meet with David O'Connell's parents and friends. Our school community is grieving, and David's parents have been so gracious in speaking out about David's battle with mental health issues in order to help other students and families learn how to assist each other, especially those who are struggling with depression. On this evening's agenda, we do have some actions that pertain to the mental health and behavioral health of our students. On a related note, we also have a special ed straight talk program tomorrow, February 2nd, titled Grieving a Variety of Losses in Our Lifetime, and that'll be at 7 p.m. with Dr. Katie Kostaris. Details were emailed to all of our families last week and employees, and you can check our district calendar for more information. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. O'Donnell. At this time, we have a legislative update on our agenda. David and Lori, do you have any items for the legislative update?
Amber, the only thing I'll mention is the fact there's a consolidated effort right now to get federal waivers on the state. And I think we're making quite a bit of an effort to address that.
Okay.
I'll just add that last week, the PSBA and 7 other education groups in the state sent a letter to Tom Wolf and Acting Health Secretary Allison Beam asking for a specific plan to be developed for the quick distribution of COVID-19 vaccine to those in educational settings. And then last week too, the Senate approved a bill, a comprehensive $912 million relief package to direct federal coronavirus stimulus money to certain schools and businesses. And the bill allocates $197 million to be used to create a $150 million competitive grant program under the Department of Education to assist non-public schools. The remaining $47 million would provide $17.5 million for CTCs, $17.5 million for IUs, a little over $7 million for charter schools for the deaf and blind and approved private schools, and $5 million for the state system of higher education to support its restructuring initiative. And then lastly, Governor Wolf will present his budget tomorrow. And so the details haven't really been released, but it was announced that among his priorities is to propose an expansion of the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program. It's a grant program for contaminant remediation projects. But in addition, he's also proposing to use the RACP program to fund not just hazard remediation, but also for efforts to close the digital divide among students by broadening eligibility criteria to include broadband providers and schools. So
Interesting.
that's all. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I think we do have a legislative item on, but it's under info discussion, so I won't chime in right now. So we'll get a chance to have some dialogue when we get there and follow up from CCL.
Sounds good. Gretchen, do you have a report from the COG?
Yes, I do. So there was a general forum meeting on January 25th and some reorganization because of the new year. So Denny Haymeister is now the chair and Rich Frank of College Township is now the vice chair. One thing that they went over and they do every year at the beginning of the year is meeting etiquette. And I just thought that it was a really good idea and interesting that they have this and they have a reminder of this, not only every year at the general forum meeting, but then also every committee meeting. They, at the beginning of the year, they just remind people. And so I thought that this might be something that our board may want to take a look at. So I'll send a copy of the COG meeting etiquette to everyone to be able to see what's in it. But just briefly, it says that it's committed to an environment in which all individuals are treated with respect and dignity. Each individual has the right to participate in a professional atmosphere that promotes equal opportunities to be heard and to participate in the decision-making process. This would also apply to public comment, of course. At the same time, conducting the meeting is to be handled efficiently, so the time that people invest at meetings is well spent and concludes within a reasonable time frame. Please respect each other as well as the chair and their role in facilitating the expeditious conduct of business. I thought it was maybe something that our board might want to just take a look at and discuss. So I will send that, as I said. And then also, I attended the COG Public Safety Committee meeting, and what I thought was most pertinent to the school district is that Sean Kaufman gave of emergency management. He gave an update on the vaccines, and he basically said that that there was at that time a little question about who has the authority to go ahead and distribute the vaccines beyond phase 1A, should that time come. And then, of course, it got expanded to 65 plus and high risk individuals. So he basically said it's unclear who has that authority. I tried to look into it, and I was unable to find anyone locally who was actually said, I have the authority to expand into 1A, 1B, et cetera, as we continue through the vaccination process to actually distribute it. So right now, it's my understanding that it's being decided at the medical facility level. So Mount Nittany would decide, Geisinger would decide that's what I've ascertained. If that's incorrect, then hopefully somebody can let us know. And then I also attended, I meant to attend, and somehow I missed it, the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee, because SCASD is also has representation on that committee. Betsy Whitman of Patton Township is the chair, and Carla Stilson of College Township is the vice chair. This is a new committee that was just created. And one of the things they're working on, a big initiative, is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. And this is something that SCASD has also worked on a little bit, and we'll continue to see how we can participate in that. And I'll go into details on that in the facilities meeting in case anybody's interested. And then they're also within the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee, they are doing planning on doing outreach on the committee initiatives, including a community forum. And so you'll probably be hearing a lot more about what they intend to do and what their initiatives are, what their goals are. And that'll be coming up soon. And then also, I wanted to mention what I communicated from SCASD to the COG, because that's now happening as well. And again, if anybody ever has anything, please get it to me. I had hoped it could be discussed in the communications committee meeting, but I didn't hear anybody suggest anything that we wanted to communicate. But please, always happy to do that. What I did communicate to the COG at the general forum was that the charter legislation that was discussed, I believe in CCL, and there were a couple people who seemed to be quite interested in that. and perhaps wanting to write letters to representatives about that legislation that's going to be coming up, hopefully. And then also, I just reported that teachers still do not have vaccines for COVID-19. I just thought that they would probably want to be aware of that. And then the last thing is the solar purchasing power agreement. There was also a meeting for that. And basically, two things that I wanted to report out of that meeting. One is there were, I believe, 3 different timelines that were discussed for proceeding with the coming sort of year or so on how that project might proceed. And one of the timelines seemed to be okay with both the budget cycle of the COG and the school district. And so that will be presented in the facilities meeting that's coming up. And then after the meeting, we attended a workshop put together by the Rocky Mountain Institute. And these are folks who do SPPAs. This is what they do, and they know them very well. And they've run a series of workshops that are extremely educational because this is a big project and it's a big undertaking, and we want to make sure we understand everything very thoroughly. Hence the multiple year-long process that we're going through with this project. And basically, I just wanted to report from I'll go into it in the facilities meeting, but it was extremely helpful because there are specific criteria that we took a look at to start to think about in terms of like risk assessment and what we want to put in the RFP, how do we want to constrain ourselves versus not constrain ourselves. And I did communicate that cost is going to be the number one criteria for the school district in my estimation when that time comes, which won't be for a few months now. But I'll go into that in further detail at the facilities meeting, but there was the SPPA meeting, and that is everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Okay, board members, any other communication items? Lori.
Yeah, thank you. I just happened to notice that today marks the beginning of National School Counseling Week. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to offer thanks to our counselors and all the work that they do for our kids.
Oh, thanks for thinking of that, Lori, and noting that. Okay, any other communication items? Okay. Then moving on to routine approvals. If we could have a motion at this time to approve the routine approval listing as presented on the agenda.
Leah, so moved.
Duffy, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on routine approvals? Okay, I'm seeing none. Well, is there any public comment on the routine approvals? Okay, we will have a roll call vote then.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sidney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes.
Okay, so moving on to action items. Item A is a motion to approve the 2019-2020 audited financial statements, and this is shown in attachment 5A.
Adele, so moved.
Leah, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Okay, Jim.
No, I just wanted to say, so we dealt with this in a little bit more detail in the finance committee. And I just want to say that what the overwhelming reaction from our external auditors, what a good job our finance department does. So Randy, congratulations, and congratulations to all your people. They were very complimentary of the work that our finance people do.
Mm-hmm. Laura?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to take it down. I basically was going to say what Jim said. It is in the minutes of that meeting, but because it's been the practice, I'll just add to what Jim said. It's been our practice that Scott Fozart, our chair, started a few years ago, that we always actually ask the staff to leave after we hear the report so that we can talk privately with the auditors. And just be aware, he said that was a practice from his previous work life, and they were extremely complimentary. It's good for us to have that opportunity to interact with them individually. And they really said lives would be much easier if all districts went this way. So.
Yeah.
Thank you for those kind words, and we definitely appreciate them, but I couldn't do it without a great team, and Donna Watson is definitely the ringleader of that team, and as well as the rest in the finance office. But we're very happy to report that we have another clean audit opinion, and we had a very successful audit year, and we're thankful that we can report that to you tonight.
Thank you, Randy and Donna.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, then we will have a roll call vote.
Ms. Sidney,
Yes.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
That item has passed. Item B on the agenda is a motion to approve an amendment with Ignite Education Solutions for Title III services at Grace Prep High School. And this is shown in attachment 5B.
Duffy, so moved.
Leah, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Okay. Any public comment? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote.
Dr. Bader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sidney.
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. Item C is a motion to approve the 2020-2021 agreement with True to You Counseling Services, and this is shown in attachment 5C.
Duffy, so moved.
Bedell, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Laurel.
Thank you. I had sent in an email early this afternoon with a couple of questions that pertain both to this and to the following item, and asked that we make sure that the people from whom the memo came were aware I'd be asking the questions, so I hope they are. I'm wondering how these firms were selected and the amounts estimated.
Second, I have the responses. So what I understand is that they were based upon their familiarity with the district. I believe that excuse me, I'm not, I need just one more second, please.
Saria is on as well. She can speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see that she was on. Go ahead, Saria.
Okay, is she able to? I don't know if she's able to join in.
Is she in as a participant?
Yes.
Yeah, I do
Okay.
see her.
Nick, can you make her?
No, she's good. She's. I just don't know if she's at her.
Okay. So I apologize. So these were these amounts were estimated given local practitioners compensation because they will be under supervision by other professionals and based upon the number of hours a week that they can provide. One is significantly less than the other based upon their number of hours that they can provide. These therapists are persons of color who worked with the district previously as interns and have provided services for students of color. We both received very positive feedback from families and students. They supported as well as administration and school counselors, and they have both since graduated and are working at providing counseling services in State College under supervision. these funds from our disproportionality funding, which we are required by the state to allocate, is a budget now of $120,000, which is based upon our IDEA funding amount that we are receiving this year.
Sri is with us now. Laurel, do you have any follow-up questions? She said she emailed you those earlier.
No, that's very helpful. The other question I had, and it sounds like from what Randy said, is that these will be used for counseling directly for students, which is obviously a need, and it's good to have. We had talked about the need to ensure that all students have someone that they feel comfortable talking with. So it's good to hear that about having some counselors of color as well.
Okay.
So I'll have a question on the next one, but this, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Dan, did you have a question?
No, actually, Randy answered it. Thank you.
Okay. Board members, any other questions? Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote.
Ms. Brand.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Vidal.
Yes.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Ms. Sidney.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Okay, so that item has passed. Item D is a motion to approve the 2020-2021 agreement with Woodson Counseling and Consulting, and this is shown in attachment 5D.
Duffy, so moved.
Bader, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Laurel?
Thank you. This one, when I just went to check on it, the only mention I could find of a Woodson Counseling and Consulting was appeared to be based in Illinois, and the address on the contract seems to be along the stretch of Plaza Drive between the north parking lot and the wetlands. So I appreciate the explanation that these are people who've worked with the district previously, and I realize in telecommuting that we can offer services that way. My concern is, well, first is a question, is that the case that this is an Illinois-based company? And second, if that is the case at some time in the future, when people can meet in person, have we helped establish relationships with someone that then can't be transferred to in-person services?
So, sorry, that individual, the name of the person behind that business, her name is Kia Woods, and she resides here in State College. And the address that she has there is an address for her to receive correspondence, but she does not because she's telehealth only. Are you able to hear me? I apologize.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, because she is telehealth only, brick and mortar is not necessary at this point. And she receives her mail there, but is under supervision, similar to the person that's in a True to You. So can utilize her supervisor's space if needed for face-to-face, and or also has indicated that she can also come into the building if she is cleared to come into the building to see clients that would require to be seen face-to-face. But due to COVID, we do have to go through HR and go through that entire process for her to be allowed to do that.
Okay, but it sounds like in the future, should there be a desire to continue, she is locally based, and that could be.
She is absolutely.
Now I was looking more
based.
ahead to hopefully at some point when we can do things not just through telehealth. So,
Yeah, there's hope there.
Yeah, thank you for addressing that.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Any public comment? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote then.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Ms. Concepcion.
Yes.
Dr. Duffy.
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes.
Mr. Leos.
Yes.
Ms. Sidney.
Yes.
Dr. Bader.
Yes.
Ms. Vidal.
Yes.
Okay, that item has passed. And then item E is a motion to approve the purchase of wireless network equipment from Logicalis, and this is shown in attachment 5E.
Leah, so moved.
Duffy, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Laurel?
Yeah, thanks. This is one of those things, and we get so many of them between this and the routine contracts that we're asked to approve on technology that are obviously pieces of the big picture of what we provide to students and the community and staff with technology. What I'm concerned about as we're looking ahead with possible budget constraints coming is that both the board and the community understand the various expenses and what goes into what we provide to people and what we provide to people. It's much easier to understand, well, we need a first grade teacher because we've got X number of students. And these technology things that add up to a lot of money, nevertheless, are hard to look at individually and understand the importance. So what I'd like to suggest, and it's a suggestion only, and I hope we'll talk about it in the future, is that we have some type of presentation that gives us an overview of the entire tech piece, including its cost and what we use it for and what the different parts are. Because every single time it doesn't seem right to go through that, but overall, in the course of a year, it would be good to have a good solid understanding of all these little contracts, since we're required to vote on them.
Okay. Jim?
Let me just make sure but yeah. So just want a question for Justin. Do we anticipate supply chain problems with this purchase?
With this one, no, I don't. My understanding is that they have these in stock, and they'll be able to get them to us. Also, benefit being, I did mention in the memo, it's a next year purchase. So after July 1, so we're giving them a little bit of a notice to get the equipment for us.
That's because of the E-rate? Is that why it has to wait till next year?
Yeah, so it's just how the E-rate funding cycle works. So once it's board approved, we have to actually submit it back as a 471 and then wait for the approval from E-rate. And then basically once that's approved, we can take the order, but that's typically not until July or August.
Could you just take a minute to explain to everybody what E-rate is?
Sure. It's basically a federal funding program for technology purchases. Well, part of it is, so there's a category 1, which we're using pretty much every year. You guys might be familiar with our networking. So our internet contract is the category 1 purchase that covers part of that purchase. What this purchase is it's category 2. And that's basically grant funds provided by the government exclusively for infrastructure technology purchases, so cabling, wiring access points, switches, basically anything hardware related to provide infrastructure in the building. And this category 2 runs on a 5-year cycle, so next year will be the first year of the 5-year.
Great, thanks a lot. And just to point out that the E-rate funding comes from those little bit of taxes that you get, or a little bit of fees that you get on your phone bills and your cable bills and internet bills. So that's how it's funded in part. That's all I got.
Thanks, Jim. Amy?
Yeah, I'm totally confident we're doing this because it's something we need. The thing, Justin, that I just wasn't clear from the memo, is this a replacement cycle of infrastructure we already have, or is this adding additional infrastructure to better, because I know there was some discussion about better coverage around some buildings. So that's my only question. Are we just upgrading and replacing, or are we adding to what we have? Because that wasn't something I got from the memo.
Sure. So our infrastructure is on a life cycle, like anything else. We have technology. So it's 6 to 8 years, depending on the equipment. So this is basically replacing. So this is within our typical budget expense for infrastructure. And we're just basically, you're seeing a little bit of an increase to make sure we're getting the maximum grant refund back. But this is basically complete replacement. What we are doing though is we are switching vendors to Extreme Networks, just because of experiences we've had with other districts, and Penn State uses them in some areas. So we're going to have some improved functionality and coverage, we hope, and kind of 2 birds, 1 stone, get to better coverage.
That makes a lot of sense. It would be a different discussion, I think, if we were trying to add something else at a time when we were concerned about finances. Obviously, that would need to potentially be a deeper discussion, but to maintain our infrastructure on something as critical as wireless access, which we've all learned how dramatically important that is in this past year, that makes a lot of sense. So thanks.
No problem. And I will note, just for everyone, this one is, as the memo says, for next year. We did have some things that are up for this year, and I had worked with Randy, potentially that may come later, but we haven't worked on that refresh yet. This is just for next year and came because of the timeline for E-rate.
Thank you, Justin. Any other questions on this item? Okay. Any public comment? All right, we'll have a roll call vote then.
Ms. Concepcion,
Yes.
Dr. Duffy,
Yes.
Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
Mr. Leos,
Yes.
Ms. Sidney,
Yes.
Dr. Vader,
Yes.
Ms. Bedell,
Yes.
Ms. Brandt.
Yes.
Okay, that item is passed. Moving on to information discussion. Item A is regarding the student information system, and the information information on this is shown in attachment 6A. So I'll turn this over to Dr. O'Donnell and Dr. Stout.
We did present this and the reasoning behind the timing with the Culture, Climate, and Learning Committee, and you can see all the information in the memo. I'll turn it over to Will and Justin and have them just give an update. And Dan, obviously you chaired the meeting. If you want to share any backdrop or any follow-up questions that anybody has, the timing of a change like this is, there's a lot of ingredients in something like this. I appreciate Justin and the process that he led to get us to this point, and the actual timing of it actually is probably better this coming summer than the following summer. So in regard to the change of our student information system. So we'll turn it over to you and Justin. Thanks, guys.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. O'Donnell. I'll get started here. And as Bob said, a lot of the information is in the memo, but just a couple key points that I want to emphasize before I turn it over to Justin for some of the details. eSchool Plus is the current student information system that we have. We have had that since 2005. In 2017, eSchool was purchased by PowerSchool, and when eSchool, not to get into the weeds too much, but eSchool was a PA company, and then was purchased by PowerSchool, which is a large conglomerate out of the California area. But after PowerSchool purchased it, we saw that they gave minimal, if to very little support for the eSchool program. They had bought it, and through our research, they had bought it, I believe, for the health system in it, for the nursing services system in it, but really have neglected the student information system. So in essence, eSchool is now a legacy program, and we have not been pleased with it for a while. In fact, in the 3+ years I've been here, my first week on the job meeting with the principals, that was one of the things at the top of the list that they were dissatisfied with, was our eSchool program. For attendance, student record keeping, but we've heard from parents about the hack and parent system not being very responsive. So it's been an issue for a while. And also, when we moved to Canvas as our learning management system, we were assured by eSchool that we would have what was, I would arguably say, the most important feature that our teachers wanted in Canvas was a feature called Grade Passback, where teachers could just do their grades in Canvas, and then they would automatically go back and forth between the student information system, so teachers weren't burdened with keeping grades in two different areas. Despite a lot of work with eSchool, they weren't able to deliver on what they promised. Our tech folks have done a workaround, but it's very tenuous, and it's a lot of work for our folks to do. So we haven't been happy with that. So Justin and I had some conversations this past summer about our concern with eSchool, and we were really concerned that eSchool, because it wasn't being supported, would let us down come in regards to some of the state reporting and some of the PIMS reporting. And if we ran into issues along those lines, that would be very problematic for our district. So that said, this fall we put together a steering committee of 31 people, included administrators, and included teachers, it included tech folks, it included our folks that work with the scheduling process, the folks that work with PIMS, and we took a look at 3 new SIS programs. The first one was PowerSchool, and PowerSchool is the mothership that purchased eSchool, so we did want to take a look at that. We looked at ALMA, and then we looked at the program that we're recommending tonight, which is Synergy by EduPoint. And the committee overwhelmingly was in favor of Synergy. We just really like the features related to Synergy. It will really provide enhancements both on the scheduling side of things, attendance side of things, record keeping, but also in our ability to communicate better with families through Synergy. A couple other things before I turn it over to Justin. The nice thing about this is a cost neutral purchase. There will be slightly some additional costs because of the training involved, but we paid an annual fee for eSchool, and our annual fee for Synergy is going to be approximately the same. So it is cost neutral. As I mentioned earlier, it's certainly a more robust system than eSchool. And we know from the other districts that we've spoken to that have moved to this program that we will have much better support. So as the memo says, we are recommending that the district move from eSchool and adopt Synergy as our new student information system. So that's the overview. Justin, I'll turn it over to you for any additional details that you want to provide.
Sure. Thanks, Will. I think you really covered everything very well. Just in case someone is wondering, the other districts we looked at in Pennsylvania were Perkiomen School District, Lancaster School District, and Derry Township. And then also outside of Pennsylvania, Synergy is heavily used. It's actually the state contract for Oregon, Tennessee, and Arizona. So every school in those states are using this system. So it's a very robust system, as Will said, heavily used. It's not a newer or entry-level system. So it has some past practice that we're comfortable standing behind.
I can just from sitting in through the CCL meeting, just basically endorse this recommendation. Among the things we talked about was the manner in which Synergy integrates with existing systems relative to PowerSchool. They will assist in having to accommodate or arrange for the integration of the Synergy system with any new software or any changes that have taken place, and they'll assist with that, and that will be part of the cost of Synergy going forward. PowerSchool expects a higher rate or higher cost for every incremental change that we ask them to make. So. And the endorsement by members of the task force, I think is really powerful in terms of what it says about this particular system. So it really seems to be the burden, of course, as with any change like the large scale change, which involves all levels of the system, including clerical, all the individuals involved with interacting with kid data, is that it's going to take a while for it to be learned, and that will occur this summer. But on the other side of that, it's going to lead to a much better outcome than what we have right now.
Thanks, Dan. Jim?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, and I mentioned this at the committee meeting, that last month the CAC, the Citizens Advisory Council for Technology, reviewed the process, not the actual products themselves, but reviewed the process and were very complimentary of the process that the committee followed, as well as the decision to go with the Synergy product. You know, a couple of things that it came down to was the ability to work with Canvas. So as Will described, that single entry grading, so you don't have to put it in more than one place. The fact that it wasn't customizable, which you think on the surface, that's not a good thing. It's a really good thing, because what happens is you spend a lot of staff time developing these customizations, and then you upgrade to the next version and you have to do it all over again. So what this type of product is called configurable, where you can change some setups of it and make it look or behave differently, but they don't encourage writing your own modules or add-ons to this thing. And that's, you know, from a labor point of view, from the amount of person hours that you have to put into some of these customizations, it's a good thing to not allow the customizations. And the other thing was that the current company was really not supporting, like Justin and Will said, it was a Pennsylvania company that developed eSchool, and a company basically bought their competition and was less supportive of the system that we had. And that, combined with the fact that we're doing very little curriculum wise, makes, you know, this summer a really good time to transfer. So the CAC for Technology was very supportive of this decision.
Thanks, Jim. And thanks to the CAC members who worked on this as well. Okay, Laurel?
The other thing that we discussed in the meeting was that since parents are some of the end users as well as teachers and staff, there were parents both on the CAC as well as many of the staff who were involved in the selection process are themselves parents as well. So that side of things was also considered as part of the selection.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? So what would the next step be on this? Would it be coming back on a board agenda next time, or?
Yeah, I believe it would. Yeah, we would have it on the next board agenda for board approval.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the next item, item B under information discussion, is the 2020-2021 assessment plan, and this is shown in 6B. And I'll turn this over to Dr. O'Donnell.
Thanks, Ms. Concepcion. And Dan, if you want to give a recap from CCL, we do have Deirdre and Chris with us. If there's any additional questions, we walk through what really the status of assessment in the district this year. And so if you'd like an overview, we can do the overview, or Dan, if you want to give a recap, we can do that. We did have a lengthy discussion about assessments, a lot of questions. And, you know, from here, I think the most important thing this year is to, you know, as we move through the year, come back to the board with an update as to what we're learning about students in learning, and what do we need for issues that are related to the pandemic, and a sizable number of students who haven't been able to be in buildings, or students who have engaged to a lower degree. So we know we're having some real challenges. We also have students, you know, because of the secondary schedule and the 6 feet and in the contacts, we went with a semesterized schedule in an every other day format. So we want to understand the impact on students. Being a former math teacher, first year you go to a semesterized system without an extensive plan for supports to occur during the non-math semester. That's a concern. So we want to see what are we learning through this information, and what might we need. I think that's the most important thing. So Dan, I'll turn it over to you, and then we can open it up to questions.
I think just to give it an overview, if you walk through the table, you'll see on the left-hand column is a list of the various assessment tools, and there's a corresponding description of the purpose for each of those tools, what they measure, the time frame for using them, and the amount of time it takes to administer them. It goes from kindergarten through 12th grade. And I guess in a global way of looking at each of these individual assessments are targeting specific specific skill areas that the kiddos are expected to accomplish during their time in school. And so this allows a team of individuals, yes, the classroom teacher, but also other members of the team, other assessment specialists, counselors, and so on, to aggregate this information and be able to make judgments about the academic growth in individual areas, the potential needs for intervention, and also the ways in which students might be standing out in terms of their behavioral or social emotional development. So this is, in a sense, a list of what's in our arsenal, if you will, for these various areas. And the purpose is really to assess individual progress in specific skill areas, and not where we identify winners and losers necessarily in a normative sense, like who are the highest achieving versus lowest, the lowest performing individuals. The purpose is to find out, well, where are individual students developmentally, and what kinds of assistance do they require, and how, to what extent can we accelerate their learning, or can we support them in terms of their social and emotional development to help bring people along should they need that kind of help. And by involving a team of individuals, supporting the classroom teacher, but also involving other specialists on the team, and sometimes the mental health staff, some of the people we decided to hire this evening could assist in this process as well. So it's kind of a global listing of the various tools that we have available. Some of them are new to us. There is Acadians Learning replaces AimsWeb, which was a system we had previously used. And I go back to the list on that. There also were, there was we discussed COGAT, which is a screening device for intellectual ability that relates to gift identification. And we also discussed a tool called the Phonological Awareness Screening Test, which is a way to look at the development of fundamental skills necessary for early reading. So all of these pieces, though, fit together in terms of providing a comprehensive overview of students in terms of their learning, their development, and their needs, to the extent that we are then prompted to develop interventions to address any ways in which those students need support.
Thanks, Dan. I think you did a nice job there, because it is very comprehensive. There's a lot happening there that addresses all students. Some are used with individual students where there are challenges. And I'll ask Chris and Deirdre if they'd like to share anything from their perspective, and then we'll open it up to questions. I know there's a lot of information there.
Deirdre, do you have anything to share?
There seems to be sometimes questions about the amount of time things take, and it's like the Acadians could be anywhere from 6 minutes to 8 minutes per student. It's a one-on-one assessment. The phonological awareness this year, we are only administering that assessment to students who aren't at benchmark, and it's just 10 to 15 minutes. The MAP test is about 40 minutes, and PSSA is the one that I think is the time killer. But the rest of the assessments are really not arduous as far as a time constraint goes. I know that that's always a question at the board level, and I appreciate that. We don't want our kids spending so much time in assessments. The one assessment that takes the bulk of the amount of time is the PSSA. So I don't have anything else, Chris.
So we had attempted to give the PSAT to 11th grade this year. We were unable to work out a way to give it to 9th and 10th, given the pandemic-related safety concerns. But we had a snow day on the day that it was planned, so it had to be canceled. But we had attempted that, and as David Hutchinson mentioned earlier, The Keystone, so far we have not received a federal waiver for those tests, so we are still planning to offer them to students who are in semester courses, and we pushed them a little later in March, and just kind of waiting to see what happens with that and if there's a waiver that is offered.
Thanks,
Okay,
Chris. We gave it a good try and the PSAT and even spoke with one of their Northeast executives for several states, and they just they couldn't flex on the date at all. So that's why we couldn't move any later. So, thank you. Wanted to open up to any questions anybody has for the team.
I think Laurel's got her hand up.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment on the amount of time that tests take, because I think that that is a concern that a lot of parents and teachers have, as well as the rigmarole, everything that goes into getting set up for the tests. And that is definitely, from everything I've heard and observed, worse with the PSSAs. But I also think there is a broad question of the balance between using assessments to provide information that teachers can work with and parents can work with and students can understand about themselves, and the concerns about results being used to track students, whether that's intentional or not. And I don't think in our district that's certainly not intentional from anything I know. But I think that an overall consideration of where we go with assessments and why we're doing so many, not any individual one, because each of them have good reasons, but it's been a long, long time since the board has really talked about this philosophically. And I was very struck in looking back at a report from before I came on the board, so a decade ago, when it seems like the district really headed down some of this testing road. And one of the questions that was in the summary of that was, what are we willing to not do in order to afford the testing? And I would say not only financially, but also the time and the ways kids look at themselves, the way teachers look at themselves, which I think some teachers have been fearful that they're interpreting that they're being asked to look at students and children as a set of data. So there are just a lot of questions that go along with the testing and assessment plan, and we don't often have opportunity to discuss those broader issues. I'm not asking that we do that now, but I felt I couldn't not comment on that, given that this is a discussion of the whole assessment plan at the board level.
so is the question more about
It's really more
the
comment than
number
a
of-
question.
Pardon?
Really more of a comment and discussion than a question. So I wasn't asking a particular question, just some of the things that I've been thinking about that I'm hoping at some point, maybe in the future, we'll be able, if other people are interested in discussing them. So to talk about, as opposed to a specific question about a specific test, because many of those have been answered and it's been explained why we switched from one to the other. And I appreciate the explanation that we're only doing the one for children who aren't reaching benchmarks. So there's been a lot of good explanation. It's more a broader, like I said, a philosophical or an outlook type, and it's more of a comment than a question.
Dan?
Thanks, Laurel. And this really follows on part of our conversation during CCL among several board members who were present. And one of the things that occurred to me was that we can now sit and look at this array of assessments as they're listed, but no, fair to say, no more than 2 or 3 of those would be used at any one time for any one student or any one group of students. So the question, I think, for those who might not might wonder, how does this all fit together, would be to see if there might be an opportunity to have, in a time when we're less stressed, when we have less time demands, fewer time demands, and to do this through CCL, where we could have perhaps Jonathan Klingman could come in, perhaps representatives of the psychologists on staff, and the special educators to talk and come in and review with us how these elements fit together. How are they used, and how do we track progress, and how do we assess needs, and how do we measure progress among the students with whom we're using these tools. It wouldn't take long. It would be, I would think, would take no more than half an hour, 45 minutes. I mean, ideally, but I think it would make it more meaty. The hard part with looking at these individual assessments is you're looking at one tiny piece of the pie. I wonder, we discussed this in CCL about the possibility of getting together and seeing how well these pieces fit together in terms of people thinking about supporting kids. So anyway.
Hey, Dan, this is Deirdre. If I could just add, sorry.
Go ahead.
Just to add on to that, from a psychologist standpoint, I hear where you're coming from with Jonathan and the psychs weighing in on this. I look even more globally than that as a school principal and in this other role I'm in. Like, I feel like this is as a conversation for the principals.
Yep.
I think the psychs are more for particular analysis for a student having specific needs. But I use this particular data for looking at my building at Radio Park and saying, okay, what do I need to do to help boost the particular group of kids? How can I help use my instructional coaches to work with some teachers to do some other things to help kids? Where can my Title I reading teacher come in to say, hey, we could do some extra work with these kids and bolster what's happening in Tier 1? So I look at this assessment process as more of a Tier 1 approach and not tracking students. I don't use this data to track students. I use this data to keep myself in check as the principal and to make sure that I'm monitoring progress. So that's I think how I look at this data more.
And Deirdre, that really fits in with what I guess one of the thoughts I had about this, which is this is a team approach, and it involves a lot of levels and layers of leadership in all this. And I really apologize for not really emphasizing the key. One of the core issues in all this is, how does this help guide instruction? How does this inform us in terms of instruction? And we may bring the focus in terms of individual students, but it's also about whole groups and how to build capacity on the part of the school that you're describing. And I apologize for neglecting that. That is probably the most important feature of this assessment, of this assessment process we go through. Thank you.
Okay, I see Bob's hand up and Amy as well.
Go ahead, Amy. You're ahead of me there.
Okay, I'm happy either way. I was just going to point out, I mean, I understand that for someone looking at this information for the first time, it might seem excessive and overwhelming, and perhaps that's one of the points that Laurel's trying to make. But I think that what we have to just convey is that this covers a gamut of needs. So as Deirdre's alluding to, there are all the ways that we are tracking, instruct kids as groups and what they're learning and whether they're receiving and gaining the skills that we're trying to deliver to them. And then there's also other tools in the assessments that are screening tools for us to then figure out if there are kids who are at risk or who are not reaching certain milestones or may need further evaluation, which are really critical things. And we see a lot of that in the early elementary grades, as we've talked about with primary literacy and other really important foundational skills. We have to do a lot of screening at those ages. So there's a lot of stuff there that looks really overwhelming. But as Deirdre had shared at CCL, a lot of those screening assessments are extraordinarily brief and really more short and frequent assessments. So while looking at those charts probably feels like, oh my gosh, my kids are spending every minute of the day doing these kinds of things, the reality is that these cover a multitude of different information points that we need as a school, both for the school as a system and for the individual as well. So they kind of are symbiotic and work together to achieve all those goals. And of course, not surprisingly, at younger ages where we're building foundations, there's more touch points that we need to check and make sure that we're making the right progress. So I'm quite comfortable with this, and I don't see a need for additional development. I think many of us have bigger interests in whether the state kind of assessments are the right thing. And that's a whole different conversation, which I know, many people all have similar feelings about. So thanks. I just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Amy. Amber, I think my point when I look at what we have here, I think we could do a little bit more, and I think we have had iterations where we've better explained, like the PA Youth Survey is not an assessment. It is sort of an assessment of our system. It's not the same as the BASC screener that we use, but that's not a curriculum-based assessment. That actually is used within our counseling world and our student assessment programs, casings, as we look at our buildings. And I know that's only in the secondary world, but there are certain things in here that aren't tests.
Mm-hmm.
I do think when you break out what we do locally, some of the required screenings, and Dan mentioned Jonathan earlier, but then also how Deirdre looks at things. And, there's no question we'd love to see something like a MAP assessment, which has given kids much more respectful tasks than the state assessments any day of the week. If we could unplug the state assessments from this, we would. We think what we do locally with the MAP is much more respectful to kids. It's a much more shorter time frame, and it gives faculty feedback and students feedback so quickly, and we can use it. Whereas the state information, we don't get it till after the kids are gone. So if we could unplug that, we would. There's no question, and make this a little bit more focused, but we can't. I do think talking about curriculum-based assessments, which is a big part of what teachers do every day. So that's really not part of this. That's the assessments that we do more than any assessments in the district. And some of that is most of that's very informal. And the feedback kids get, whether it's whatever subject it is, writing, math, speaking, you name it, that feedback is powerful. So, and that's part of using assessments. So with that said, what we can do is maybe better frame the document, and then also, that like the PA Youth Survey, technically it's in there, but it's not really, what I think everybody thinks of in regard to an assessment. So with that, I just wanted to clarify that. I think we can help people with understanding this and how we're using these tools, whether it's at the classroom level, the building level, or even with the district level to help with the curriculum teams make adjustments. When I'm in service days and I sit in the back of the secondary math department, I see them looking at, they are using the state assessments in the summer to take a look at what standards groups of kids struggled with more than prior years and things like that. So they don't eat, breathe, and sleep it, but they do make some tweaks and talk about what some of our curriculum has in it and some of the holes that we need to fix. So I just wanted to share that as well. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Lori?
Thank you. I just wanted to express my confidence and support for this plan. And, to Amy's point, and to a certain extent to Dr. O'Donnell's point, if these charts seem overwhelming to parents or come across as having the feeling of, oh my gosh, my kid is just being tested constantly, for me, it represents a great effort at both doing breadth and a deep dive into what our kids are learning and how their cohorts are doing relative to them. But to that point, whatever we can do, whether it's in a back to school night to sort of explain what the testing looks like for the year and how it sits in the context of the rest of the school days, I think that would help assuage any concerns that parents might have for, if they took a look at this chart and just, saw the list of tests. So yeah, I think communication on this and contextualization would go a really long way for our parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you, Deirdre and Chris and Dr. O'Donnell. Okay, so moving on to item C then. Do we want to take a 5-minute break first and then do item C? Does that sound good? Okay.
Sure.
All right, we'll take 5 and then come back for the next item. Great. Thank you. I'll turn my camera back on as soon as I get back. Okay, are we all back? I'll wait maybe one more minute. Okay. We will go ahead and call the meeting back to order then. And the next item on the agenda, item C, is the charter school resolution, and that is shown in attachment 6C. And I will turn that over to Dr. O'Donnell as well.
Thanks, Ms. Concepcion. As you can see in the memo, it speaks to the information that we've discussed in committee, and board in June approved its resolution. And we do anticipate proposed changes to laws pertaining to charter schools. In SCASD, as we all know, we do spend over $6 million a year. This year, we have our lowest number of students enrolled in charter school, and I believe the past decade, some years we've had close to 430 students. This year, we have 314 students, and we still pay out more than $6 million. And through experiences that the board's had with some aspects of the charter school law, you've seen it firsthand on the impact on students, and other districts in our region and around the state are having very similar experiences as we are, and we do have some concerns and also some suggestions on how things could improve. Since all of the superintendents in Center, Clearfield, and Clinton counties have been having some discussions about this, and I shared your resolution with them, the idea came about in that, since we're all coming at this from a similar experience and lens, what if we shared our suggestions in a united manner with our state legislators, so that they have a sense of what the concerns are that we have, and also, how that might look moving forward. So, and from a board level, so obviously you're the elected governing officials, and so we outlined some high level points here in the memo for you, and what I think we're looking to do is to request of our boards that if our boards were to support the same components for improvement, that all the boards in our region would sign off on that, and that would be a more unified action that is pretty broad around a very large area up here, not just in Center County, but our entire IU. And I know that the superintendent in Mifflin County is also very interested to join in on the conversations this Wednesday. So I don't have a draft for you tonight, but I will send you a draft. The intent is to really just follow up on your resolution from June that you created, and potentially have a unified or regional approach based on what other schools are seeing, and it's really very similar to what you approved in June. So I just wanted to make the request of the board, and if you'd like to see something in the form of that, it's hard to get that many boards together to write one resolution. So we're trying to keep it fairly high level, and then obviously we can clarify, because we have so much experience in this arena, to addend the resolution, or talk about it again in the communications committee on how the board might want to educate our community, or board and our administrative team, because we've done some education in the past, and this might be the right time to do that. So So the request is to come forward with a resolution that other districts are considering, and the timeliness of it is the challenge, right? Because we expect, by the way, the budget proposal at the state level is postponed till Wednesday. I just had a note regarding that, and then shortly thereafter, we expect this to become discussed heavily at the state level. So with that said, that's really the request I'm making of you. And I think, it's really going down the similar path that we've gone down with your action in June. So I don't think any of it would veer away from, the statement you made in June. So I'll turn it over to any questions, or, we can talk through some of the key points, the bulleted points there, and any feedback you have. And like I said, I'll send out a draft as soon as I finish up on Wednesday, meeting with all the other districts, and get you something for your consideration, and we can take a look during agenda planning tomorrow at, are there any committees? I don't think we do. We do have finance committee, so we could come through there before the next meeting, I believe.
Okay. Any questions from the board? I was able to be in the communications committee meeting when we discussed this, and one of the points that I think David had emailed the board about was during this year of a lot of students being in online learning, the greater enrollment in cyber charter schools has essentially wiped out all the CARES money that was directed to public school districts this year. That the amount of money public schools were getting from CARES was equal approximately to the amount of money that public schools have paid in increased tuition to cyber charters this year. So while it may not be a one-to-one correlation for any individual school district, that's a pretty concerning situation. And, I think that's something that any proposed charter resolution, will emphasize, is this concern about the funding formula for cyber charter schools. And we had addressed that in our board resolution last year. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do have an uptick in cyber charter students. I believe we pay almost $1 million this year to cyber charters. And we all know that the cost, especially when we break down and we studied the costs of a very large cyber charter that contracts out the education fully for a very low fraction of what we pay for that student. So we do expect something in the legislation changing that payment, because they're not heating school buildings with children. I'm sure they have office buildings, but they do not have the same type of physical plant challenges that we have, but yet the calculation includes that. They don't have career and tech centers with the equipment and programs that we have, but the calculation does come up with a number using that. And, so that's an excellent point. There's no question. Everybody's hoping that the whole cyber charter world becomes more reasonable. Obviously, I feel like we're going down the road of offering the flexibility of a virtual program, and we'll likely have it in place moving forward because it's our teachers and we put eyes on kids, and that's not something they're going to get from a cyber charter.
Yeah, and I think that many districts around the state have raised this concern of when school districts are already running their own virtual programs, that to have to pay cyber charter school tuition is not an efficient use of funds. So. Laurel?
Thank you. Yeah, we did discuss this quite a bit in communications, as you mentioned, and in particular talked about the need and the responsibility really we have as a district to ensure that our community is informed about some of these things. We don't tell people how to think, and there are some things that there can be different opinions on, but there are also some facts, such as the money, such as the CARES funding, trying to figure out, I think maybe someone else remembers the exact number, but as I recall, one cyber charter got something like $10 million in that money, and we're trying to figure out how a cyber charter needs that much money for PPE when it's a cyber charter. So we talked a lot about those differences and educating the community and advocate and having a resolution that expresses those facts to our legislators and how that affects districts, all districts. I will say that in looking over the memo, thank you for summarizing it, Dr. O'Donnell. One of the concerns I had with the list of things on the resolution is that some of them go beyond some of the financial facts and I'll need to see it, obviously, as we all will, and it is hard to get a lot of agreement. We might not all agree with everything, and it's still important, if we possibly can, to speak with a unified voice about the problems that all districts encounter and how those affect the students. That's the issue. Districts are students, so it's how these things affect the students. But I do think that the two in particular that I have some concern about are what we mean by school district representation on charter school boards versus oversight and transparency on the part of those boards. Like we talked about the need for those boards to have the same type of requirements we do to have public meetings, to post minutes, to let there be public comment. And right now they don't have those requirements. And the other one that is a challenge for some people is the teacher certification, because some of the charter movement and the idea behind them was that sometimes having someone who's an expert, say in meteorology, to teach your class in meteorology to your high school students may be, I'm not saying is, but may be a reasonable choice in some circumstances, or someone who's a native speaker of a foreign language as opposed to a certified teacher. So that's just a caveat that may be a challenge to get full agreement on.
Yeah, we may not. But I do think when, we have an electrical engineer who's retiring this year. We're going to hire an electrical engineer. We'll be forced to spend thousands, probably tens of thousands, on that person to become certified as a teacher here. But a charter would not. And I just think it needs to be level playing field. I'd actually like to have the flexibility, because I think we can help that person get up and running rather than forcing them to take a bunch of classes their first couple of years with us while they're trying to develop a program and get to know a lot of kids and their families. So I think it's more of, level playing field. With that said, that from my perspective in the big picture here, that's probably not the highest priority on the list, but it sure would help us. I do think representation on their boards, it's almost like IUs. Dan is our representative to our IU board. If we were in the county CTC, like many counties have, those boards have a board representative from the sending district where the dollars flow from. So I do think it would add to the transparency and doesn't necessarily change the full makeup of the board, but districts that are sending all have elected board members, and whether it would be a board member or an appointed person, I don't. So I'm not sure. I believe we'll see a lot of those things in the proposed legislation. I just don't, obviously with the process at the state level on making changes to legislation, it probably will not come out as it's being discussed going in.
And the level playing field, I absolutely see your point. And that's an example of where sharing facts about something and how those affect. I mean, I just got something I should have known. So that's what I meant when I said sharing the facts with people is important.
Yeah, you make a great point. For example, our Chinese program, and I know that's a program in a charter school, and we had to go through certification challenges, but a charter school doesn't need to do that with somebody they hire to the same degree. And it just let's equal the playing field. We want to do creative things and new programs too. Mm-hmm. And right now, with a shortage in teacher prep programs around the country, I think we need to get a little more reasonable about second career professionals in education. And I've voiced that with Pedro Rivera before he left, and I'm sure that'll come back up at the state level as we look at our professional supply chain, so to speak.
Other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you very much for the work on this.
I'll make sure to get a draft out, and then as we look at agendas, we'll look to the finance agenda and see if we can have an iteration before your next meeting. Okay.
Sounds great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on then to our board committee reports. This is the next thing on the agenda. The Finance and Audit Committee had a meeting. Scott, who's the chair, is not here this evening. We did re-elect Scott Fozard to be the chair of that committee. And we went over the audited financial results. Jim or Laurel, do you have anything to add from that meeting other than what's on the meeting minutes?
They pretty much summarized it fairly well. We did talk a lot about the communication, the role the district can play with communication around issues related to charter schools and ensuring people are aware of both our resolution, but also why we why we reached the point of feeling that we should speak as a voice with other districts. We also talked some about possibilities, why we might want and what we might set up for better letting people know or opt into a way to find out about our board agendas ahead of time. And I think that was, Jim, I think those
communications, right? Yeah.
Yeah. That was the communications committee, right?
Right.
So, and you were asking about finance, Sam?
I was, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you'd done that already.
Oh, no, I was still on finance, but that's okay. We can move right
When
into
you said Jim or
communication.
Laurel, I thought you were talking about communication. We are both on the
Overlap on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
True. Good point.
Yeah.
No, I just think we talked about some of the budget futures that we might face, particularly in line as we recover from the economic situation that we're currently in, and also the health crisis that we're currently in. So, some sobering discussion there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so then communications committee, and Laurel, I'll let you continue with that.
I'm done. I'm sorry I jumped the gun. I'm embarrassed.
No, don't be. I mean,
Overlap of people.
no, it was, yeah, totally understandable.
So,
okay. And then Culture, Climate, and Learning Committee, Dan?
Well, the elements of that meeting were pretty much on our agenda this evening, and we had an opportunity to discuss this evening the student information systems and the assessment plan summary. And much of our discussion this evening mirrored the kinds of things we talked about in the committee. So I'm not sure there's much to add. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so moving forward into this week, we have upcoming committee meetings. On the 3rd, we have a Facilities and Grounds Committee meeting. And it looks like that's at 12:30. And then next week, Finance and Audit, both a committee meeting and a Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. And then on the 11th, a Citizens Advisory Committee on Facilities is scheduled. And those are all virtual meetings. So at this time on the agenda, we have time for public comment. So each person who would like to make a public comment is limited to comments of up to 2 minutes as time permits for items on the agenda or related to board business. And when I call on you, if you could just introduce yourself, where you reside in the district, and then you'll need to unmute yourself. So I see Kevin Mullen's hand up. Mr. Mullen, if you would like to unmute yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kevin Mullen. I'm a homeowner. Hello, my name is Kevin Mullen. I'm a homeowner in Patton Township, and the concern I have is the wastewater utility, UAJA, I think is overbilling you during the summers. They charge the school district $21,000 over the summers when the students are not there. And they also bill you in 2 different ways for your borough school and your schools in the townships. They bill you in different ways. I set up a website to detail everything, how they bill both you and me. The website is statecollegereport.com. And they've also been overbilling me for several years, and I've been investigating and researching this whole topic. And I have a lot of information at statecollegereport.com. And if any of you have questions, the board members have my email, or you can contact me at that site at the bottom, statecollegereport.com. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, is anyone else here waiting who would like to make a public comment? Okay. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. So moving on to future agenda planning, our next meeting is February 15th. And board members, if you have any items for future agenda planning, feel free to get in touch however is convenient. And at this time, I would like a motion to adjourn the meeting to an executive session.
Adele, so moved.
Leah, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. All in favor of adjourning? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, and we are adjourned.
And everybody.
Good night.